This is Darren McCarty, four-time Stanley Cup champion, Detroit Red Wings, Lemieux killer, Stanley Cup winning goal guy. You're listening to SportsRadioDetroit.com.
Pucking around.
Oh, Jesus.
Welcome to a very sick Pucking Around. I am Jason Binkham. I'm here today with the franchise Steve Height. Hopefully my dude will do his best to spell me, as my voice is completely destroyed thanks to my roommate. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, man. My allergies are kind of kicking me in the nuts a little bit today, but we'll get through it.
Well, hopefully not in the testicles, because you need those. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. We recorded this. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, listeners. You're gonna hear a lot of sniffling, a lot of heavy breathing. We got to get this out because we care about what's going on, and obviously we held off recording because last night was as sad as it was for those of us that like certain teams. It was the complete end of the second round. And now we can celebrate the fact that Steve and I no longer have a single pick in the game, so neither one of us owes each other a dinner, which is nice.
That was like one of the first things I said to you.
Yeah, it was the first thing he texted me last night. Hey, at least we don't know each other.
Other than the Washington Chokers meme.
Yes, that's true. That was the first one you put up, I believe. So Pittsburgh wins. You know what? No, I'll get to that. Nashville clinched like what feels like a fucking month ago. That series... I've never been happier to have called something completely randomly. Like, honestly, this postseason, much like last postseason, and Steve, we talk about this all the time, it stands to prove me wrong. It stands to prove all of us wrong. Like, we don't know shit about hockey at all. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you have a little bit more problems with that than I do, but this year, especially the Western Conference, is just a shit show. I'm just like, okay. Like, Predators and Anaheim, like, what? Like, that's, like, not to, like, be, like, calling any fan bases out or anything, like, or any teams out, but, like, when you think of the Western Conference, you think of those two teams, I just almost was uninterested at the point when I heard it. I'm just like, ugh. I thought Edmonton maybe would have been a bit more flashy of a pick there, but I don't know. The Predators are going to be well rested, that's for sure. They've won both rounds convincingly so, and then Anaheim has went 7-4, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a series that this is a common trait in both series, at least from my perspective. No one cares. Like, the NHL worked itself down to the two of the teams that nobody, and don't anybody who listens to this show, you know what, if you do disagree with this next sentence, you can tweet at us. You can see our Twitter at the end of the show for where to get at me. Nobody wanted to see Anaheim or Ottawa get this far. Those are supposed to be obstacle teams. Like, they are not supposed to be the team. Like, God willing, like, or God forbid, like, what if we come to a Stanley Cup final and it's Anaheim and Ottawa? I may not watch the Stanley Cup final.
That'd be a repeat of what, 2007?
Yeah, and no one cared then either. Like,
no.
That's the thing. Like, no one cares about it. Like, it is unfortunate. It's a product of the sport, but my God, like, holy crap, you want to talk about no one caring. Like, Anaheim just barely, like, within the last 10 years became a relevant team. We'll say last 15. Give them a little credit. Became a relevant NHL franchise. Before that, they were nothing with no fan base. And Ottawa is celebrating, what, their 25th season as the Senators proper. Like, I know that that's good for the growth of the sport, and it's probably good for either of those fan bases if either of them were to advance past this point. But as a sports fan, last night for me personally, and this, I'm going to ask your opinion on all this. I'm sorry to kind of get ranty here, but last night for me personally, as a hockey fan, was like it was like that off wrestling pay-per-view. Like, you know how they have like maybe 3 a year in wrestling. Some of you listen to WWE, or some of you watch WWE, listeners. Steve, I know you have in your past. Every like 4 pay-per-views back in the 2000s, all the bad guys would win. And that's what last night felt like to me. Like, it was like I remember waking up, and before any game started, I was like, but what if Pittsburgh and Anaheim win tonight? Like, would you really be able to care going forward? Because the Pittsburgh narrative doesn't fucking intrigue me in any way. I don't know about you, and I'm sorry, I took the mic from you a little bit here when I meant to not talk, but go ahead, buddy.
No, you're good. It's kind of nice to hear you dive in a little bit considering the circumstances going on. That's some passion right there. We'll give you that one. But I think on the Western side of it, I'm kind of pulling more for the Predators now, because it's like I kind of want to see them get to the final because they haven't done it. And it's like that team has so much like mysticalness around them. It's just like Pekka Rinne could win a Conn Smythe trophy if they get to the finals and win. Like, he's playing out of his freaking mind. I mean, their core has some injuries and they're still playing extremely well. They put out 2 teams in a combined like what, 11 games? Something like that.
Less than that. It was 4 plus 10.
10, yeah. So like they played extremely well, and they are well rested. That's something I kind of alluded to before. And Anaheim just played a really long series that was pretty grinding and grueling. I think the only thing that will happen with Anaheim is I think they're going to outplay the Predators physically. They have that right there. But I think goaltending is definitely in the Predators' back. I mean, Pekka Rinne has played out of his freaking mind.
Let's talk about that. Pekka Rinne through the postseason, 8 wins, 2 losses, a 137 goals against average, and a 951 save percentage with 2 shutouts. Are you kidding me?
Dude's automatic. That's unreal numbers. I mean, and that's considering the fact that they played Chicago in the first round, scored, I think, 4 goals they scored? Something like that, maybe?
I think it's 3, actually. I think it's 3.
Yeah, so that's a team that had probably some of the best scoring in the National Hockey League. The one thing that the Anaheim really needs to pick up on is their power play is abysmal. They're sitting at like a 13% right now in the playoffs, which is not very good. Their penalty kill is really good, but their power play definitely needs to step it up a little bit.
You say 13%?
I thought it was around 13.
I'm sorry, are we on spinning the wheels? Those are Red Wing numbers right there. That's not good.
Considering considering their power play is Getzlaf, Ketzler, Fowler, Lindholm, and
what, Perry?
I think, yeah. Like,
it's like what? That'd be like the top 5 best 5 players in a line in the league, like on a single team. Like, I don't think I could name 4 better pairs of 5 in the league on any single team.
Not to mention, during the regular season, their power play was one of the best in the league. It was
as
up
it fucking should be with that lineup. Honestly, that series pissed me off because, you know, I'm not an Oilers fan. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not jumping on a bandwagon or whatever. You know, especially not in this show. Like, that's kind of our thing, is we've always been hockey fans. Like, I've been aware of the plight of the Oilers for the last 10 years when they weren't busy winning 1,000 cups in the 80s, and now they're so sad. But in the same token, it's like I kind of liked that story. Like, that's the one thing that hockey accidentally shoots itself in the foot on. That's going to be the kind of the narrative of, at least my personal narrative of this postseason. You took all the good stories, all the heartwarming, interesting stories that, you know, writers can write about and reporters can talk about and podcasters can discuss, and you fucking pushed them out. You know, Edmonton coming back, you know, surging back to life as a viable candidate again, they're gone. Calgary is a young upstart team trying to make their name, they're gone. You know, St. Louis as the ne'er-do-wells who, you know, maybe this would be the year they do well despite trading their number one, you know, defenseman, they're gone. Chicago, you know, the current reigning dynasty in the league that's not named Pittsburgh, they're gone. Like, the Western Conference literally shot itself in the foot down to where Nashville, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy Nashville, but they're the only story left because Anaheim, fuck Anaheim. Like, they are Ottawa West to me. I just don't care. They They're a bunch of goons who play a style of hockey that I don't really enjoy. I don't enjoy watching it. It's slow. It's plodding. They're just going to gently get to your end, and they're going to, throw a couple shoulders in your face, and then Corey Perry's going to score short side above the catching glove because he apparently can snipe at will, but he only scores like 20. Like, it's just so fucking dull. Like, maybe I'm trying to get your explanation of this. Like, do you feel the same way watching the Ducks, or am I just bigoted for some reason?
No, like, it's something about the way they play. They try to get in your face. They try to be overly physical. After every whistle, they're spearing and slashing and pushing your hands, face washing you, all that garbage, which I just can't stand. I hate that stuff. They did it every single whistle in that Edmonton series, dude. It was nuts. And how much Kessler was all over McDavid. And people want to say, oh, it's just hockey. No. That's bullshit hockey. That's what that is. 1, 2. I never like Randy Carlyle teams. I never have. Like, even when he coached the Leafs, I thought that they just were garbagely coached teams. They didn't play well. And all of a sudden he gets a better lineup, and now he's in the conference final again. Like their goaltender. That's the one thing that's such an enigma to me. Their goaltender can literally lose them a game so quickly, or just he's kind of there. Like, Gibson, I think he's so young. He has a lot of potential, but literally Cam Talbot lost the Oilers the game last night. No question. Flopping around like a fish. Belly down facing the inside of the net. Like, that's not goaltending. I don't know what the hell happened with the guy that should have been a Vezina Trophy candidate, played like 90-something games, just flopping around in Game 7 in the second round. Like, I was at loss for that. And then Connor McDavid doesn't score a point in the last 2 games. The game they won 7-0 didn't have a point.
That's not good.
No, you're not going to win a series.
No.
And for his legacy moving forward, next year, when they probably make the playoffs in a decent seed again, he's got to have a good series.
He's got to have a good entire postseason. Like, this could be the kind of thing where you get a monkey on your back for a long, long time. Like, obviously,
Joe Thornton.
Yeah, obviously it's a little different because we're not trying to like be fire and brimstone after 1 year, his first year in the postseason, his first full year playing. Because he had that huge injury in his rookie season. But it is troubling that he mostly disappeared the longer it went on, it seems.
Mm-hmm. And the more physical the game got, the more he disappeared even more. He was not there at all. And he got shut down. He made some really bad mistakes last night, too.
And you don't even have the excuse that he's a small guy. I think he's like 6 foot tall. Like, it's not like he's, Theo fucking Fleury out there. You know what I mean? It's not like Yuri Hoodler. You know what I mean? He's not small getting beat up by all those bruisers in Anaheim. He's an average height or maybe slightly above average. I actually don't remember offhand. I don't know if you're pulling that up or not, but it just seemed like maybe it's just youth and maybe it'll fade. Go ahead.
The one thing too is looking at if you look at the surface stats of his playoffs, he had 9 points in 13 games, which is pretty passable. You're like, okay. But then you look at Leon Draisaitl with 16 points in 13 games, and you're just like, what happened to McDavid there? That's when you look at that comparison, you're just like, what? Like,
to be fair,
who?
Subtract one of those games, and Draisaitl's down at, 11 points? He had 5 points in that 7-0 game. I mean, yeah. He kind of went off there, so... But 11 versus 9, I mean, Draisaitl was drafted high. If I'm not mistaken, he was a top 5 pick. So, I mean, he should be leading up to that. So,
I mean, even Mark Letestu is higher than him.
Oh, that's not good. That's what I mean. Super not good. Dude, fucking Jake Getzel has more goals. Or has as many goals as McDavid has points.
Jake Getzel is apparently Mr. Playoff.
Getzel... Fuck Jake
Mr.
Getzel.
Game 7.
All right, let's finish up talking about the West. Let's discuss Nashville a little bit here because that series was. I know that it took them 6 to win it, but
I don't even remember half of it. It's been so long.
I did watch a lot of those games because they were the earlier games because there wasn't a lot of interest, but that never seemed like St. Louis really stood a shot to me. Like. It never felt like St. Louis was actually in that series. Like, it always kind of felt like it was Nashville's to lose, at least to me. I mean, maybe I misinterpreted it, but Nashville is a team possessed right now. I mean, I've said it like every week though of the postseason. They have all the traits of a team you want to succeed in the postseason. They got an annoying ass line that is centered by an all-star. They have a goaltender with something to prove, and they have a defenseman who is a top 3 in the league defenseman. So it's what you want to see. Honestly, if I had to pick one of these teams, and we might as well do our picks right now. My emotional and my logical pick is Nashville. Go ahead on your thoughts on that series and your pick.
First of all, I'll just start with the pick, same, because that's a team teams that have something to prove with a chip on their shoulder that don't get recognition are really dangerous teams this time of year. Last year, it was Pittsburgh in this same situation. They just beat Capitals Game 7 again. They advanced, they beat the Capitals again, and then they have to play the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is a big deal. And I remember thinking how well Pittsburgh was playing. They got a chip on their shoulder. I called it like they're going to get to the finals. It's going to happen. And we all were the same thought about that. And I think the situation is the same for the Predators. It's like the reverse, because they have all those things you listed. And Pekka Rinne having to have a coming out party when he's been doing this shit for like 10 years just annoys me infinitely, because he's probably top 5 goaltender in the league. Like, he's not quite top 3 probably, but he's close. He's pushing it. He's always been one of those guys that's had a decent defense in front of him, but when the team wasn't as good, he still posted excellent goals against averages and save percentages. He's always been like one of those guys in the league that if he maybe went to a different team, he probably would have had a Stanley Cup by now. Like, you're just thinking about that. So I think watching it more, it's going to be a boring series to kind of watch, but I try to find the storylines, and I think Pekka Rinne is probably the best one for me. And, NBC's had a field day with that already, so we'll see how long that holds up and is enamoring.
Yeah, I'm trying to read his stats right now in the postseason, and it's difficult with the phone because, I don't want to obviously use any of the internet I'm using to talk to you, but why do you have scoring? He's a goalie. Ugh. There we go. Postseason. Yeah, his numbers have always been above 900. He had one down season. I mean, that's always been my image of Pekka Rinne. To me, was always the goalie on the team that couldn't score. You know what I mean? And you hit the nail right on the fucking head. Like, this is your episode to lead, by the way, because you're nailing it. Like, Pekka Rinne having to have a coming out party when he's been a top 10 goalie in the league for going on 10 years now. I mean, the guy's never been bad. You know what I mean? He's never been maybe Carey Price or, Henrik Lundqvist. He's not on that level. And he's playing like it right now, but I still wouldn't put him there. But I will say that, he's never been the problem on that team. It's always been a complete lack of scoring. Go ahead.
I think the biggest thing, too, is this series is actually going to face a team who could score, has a scoring threat. St. Louis, I mean, they can't really score. Then they played Chicago, who should have been able to score, but they shut them down admirably. So, honestly, I think this is going to be the test for him. If he keeps these numbers coming up, he's 100% my front runner for the Conn Smythe outside of Malkin if he makes it.
Yeah, Malkin definitely has stepped up his game. Let's talk about the most boring series. We made our predictions in the West. You heard us. The most boring series, which I'm going to hand off because I have to cough. Ottawa, New York. Go ahead, Steve.
I think the Ottawa-New York series is really intriguing because – or not New York, Ottawa and Pittsburgh. I'm sorry. I think the biggest thing here is Sidney Crosby can really establish his reign on the same as Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane level, because he could win a third Stanley Cup finally, and he could be doing maybe back-to-back, which is insane to me. I think, outside of his – injury issues that he's had, I think Game 7 was definitely a strong performance from him against the Capitals, and like I said, I called the Penguins because I didn't think Washington would be able to get over the mental hurdle, which is the Pittsburgh Penguins for them. The 2 straight years, 2 Game 7 series, couldn't win. They had some ups and downs, but I think the Capitals are going to have to change something. I don't see Barry Trotz coming back. I think they're going to blow some of it up because you can't have that many seasons in a row and get out second round ousted and keep your core. Like, you got to change something around here.
Yeah, and I was actually trying to get you to talk about the Ottawa New York series leading into the Eastern Conference Finals, because that was a series I spent 2 games with it, and it was I mean, it was a painful watch. Like, I mean, yes, it was high scoring at certain points, and the Rangers did their best to make it interesting, but Ottawa was like, no, wait, hold on. We're boring. Let's slow this down. We are boring. We are not going to play fast-paced scoring hockey. This is Ottawa. We're going to slowly get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and we're going to win games 4-3 because your goalie is going to have a panic attack in Game 5, and it never felt to me like that series just was not. This has been my problem with Ottawa this entire postseason. They're dull. Like I don't know. Again, you've been on point this show. Maybe you can explain my thoughts better because again, I'm losing it. Go ahead.
No, that's cool. I think you're kind of right there. I think a lot of it is their tactics, even their on ice tactics, kind of lull you to sleep. They kind of dump the puck, they chase, they try to cycle, they push it to Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson skates around with the puck for 2 minutes, and then he gets a shot on goal. And then it's like it's not really as entertaining as the Rangers game because the Rangers game is purely built on getting the puck up ice very quickly and just fast hockey. They get the puck on net, they look for the rebound to bang in, and then they like to play aggressively in the corners and just play physical down low, which has been successful for them in the playoffs so far. Except the problem is Ottawa's a much bigger team than their first round opponent was, and they play a lot slower. They play just a more slow-paced game of hockey. They like to play the trap, and their speed was neutralized instantly by that. And Erik Karlsson kind of ran all over the Rangers. I don't know how. He basically was playing forward in most of the games. Like he had a few games where I think he had like almost 3 points. He's just running around out there. I think Ottawa's one of those teams I just can't stand personally because obviously I'm a Leafs fan. I just don't like Ottawa. 1 and 2. I think their brand of hockey is just annoying as hell to watch. It's like the same thing. It's like the inverse of Anaheim, just less physical. And they don't score as much, but they just find ways to win. And I think a lot of that is due in a large part to Craig Anderson. He's played phenomenally. His numbers were insane when I looked. They were pretty crazy. I think he's number 1 in goaltending right now. Yeah. 8 wins, 4 losses, 9-14, 2-4 goals against average. It's pretty good. I mean, it's not as good as Pekka Rinne numbers, but no, considering their opponents, they've had to play against 2 teams that can actually score goals. I mean, those are pretty good numbers. Those are solid numbers. I don't think it's Conn-Smythe numbers yet, but we're pushing it.
No, it's absolutely true, and that's it. See, like I said, this is why I handed it off to you. You nailed the point on the head. They're Anaheim minus physicality, which, I mean, at that point, what are we watching here? We are watching Erik Karlsson. I mean, like honestly, I feel like this is a series. We'll get to Pittsburgh, Washington in a minute, but I feel like this series is probably one of the easiest picks of the postseason to me. Although, to be fair, as is pointed out every week, I'm fucking wrong a lot. Like, we picked New York confidently in that series, and Ottawa was like, no, dude, we're going to play boring hockey. We're going to get to the finals. But that being said, I still have supreme confidence in Pittsburgh because Ottawa I'll answer your question. You don't know why Erik Karlsson was able to run roughshod all over the New York ice. The answer is that nobody on the New York Rangers plays defense. Their quote-unquote best defenseman of that series was Brendan fucking Smith. Like, I heard his name so much, and I was watching him just be Brendan Smith. He wasn't doing anything exceptional. But when the standard is Ryan McDonough, who's only, like, only agreeable attribute is that he has a wicked shot, I mean, that the standard is low. They need to rebuild that defense. New York, it's a sad story because you see a guy like Lundqvist and Ovechkin are in the same category to me. Guys who are elite in their position, like top 1, top 2, arguably top 1, top 2. And honestly, it just looks like neither of them is ever going to get a cup. And that's kind of a bummer to me personally. But Pittsburgh and Washington, let's get over there because that's a series. I mean, you want to talk about emotionally draining. I was big time on board with the Capitals this year. Not a bandwagon fan, but I'm a hockey realist. That was a team that was well assembled, top to bottom. and running 4 lines, and they did one of my favorite things, which they started doing it in Game 5, which is when they kind of turned the series back before they ultimately lost in 7, which was called spreading the wealth. They moved Ovechkin down to the 3rd line, not because he wasn't doing good, but because that gives them Ovechkin on the 3rd fucking line. And that's a genius move on Trotz's part, and unfortunately it didn't pan out because everybody forgot their balls at home in Game 7. And, I mean, that game last night, you spent some time with it, right? Just give me a nod.
I watched every minute.
Okay. Was that not one of the worst performances of Washington this year? And
Hands
take
down.
It from there, by the way. Go from there.
Outside of Game 2, yeah. Game 2 was up there too, but I mean, Game 1 was a close one. Game 2 definitely, yeah. I think the one thing you have to think about when you're moving, like a lot of people were like trying to throw Barry Trotz under the bus for that move, and as a hockey brain and understanding what they're trying to do, spreading the wealth, that's a matchup game because Crosby and Malkin are on 2 separate lines. So technically the 3rd center was like Nick Bonino, I think. So it's like you're putting Nick Bonino to try to defensively play against Alex Ovechkin. You're winning that matchup all day if you're Alex Ovechkin. You're like, okay, this is good for me. And let's not forget Alex Ovechkin is a point per game player in the NHL playoffs.
No, he's a choker.
Career.
Check every single Facebook comment thread. He's a choker, Steve. Go ahead.
I would love to personally have a discussion with multiple people in that regard because this is what I'm going to say. You're fucking stupid. 1. 2, sorry, I had to get that out of the way. 2, I just think I think a lot of it now is the pressure of him not winning a cup and him getting older is a real thing now. And I even heard some of the CBC guys, I think it was Nick Konstantinopoulos, he was kind of like, maybe they need to rethink the Ovechkin experiment. I was just like, you know what? At this point, you kind of have to consider it a little bit. If you're Ovechkin, you might think, maybe I have a better chance with a different team. Like, this is not going to happen here. I got to start thinking about other things because he's not getting any younger. That's for sure. And Crosby could be, again, up another Stanley Cup on him. I mean, that's the ultimate rivalry, right? And that's how the NHL wants to pin it. Yet he's got a big goose egg. He hasn't been to a Stanley Cup final yet.
Yeah, it's kind of like
he can't get out of the second round.
No, it's kind of like if you compare like late 80s, early 90s quarterbacks. It's like comparing Dan Marino to like John Elway. Like, arguably they're quarterbacks of similar or nearly identical skill sets. They're both pocket passers who put up ridiculous yards. Only one of them ever won Super Bowls, though. And only one of them is ever really talked about as the greats. Dan Marino gets forgotten a lot. And Dan Marino was on par with Troy Aikman and John Elway and Joe Montana. But no Super Bowl equals no conversation. I don't, and that's the question I'll ask before I even give my response. Do you think Ovechkin would be Marino'd if he doesn't get the chance to play for a cup?
I definitely think that could be a happening thing. Like, that's just weird about fans in general and fandom. It's like everything is built on championships, which I agree is a huge component of like what you've successfully done. It's a big measuring stick because, people, hockey players in general leave other leagues like the KHL to come here to win a Stanley Cup. That is the highest thing you can do in hockey is win a Stanley Cup. Like that's the threshold for the highest, right? But Alexander Ovechkin could go down as maybe the number 2 greatest player to ever play the game points wise if it's all said and done, if he keeps up his pace. So at the same time, it's kind of rough because I pull for the guy. I love Alexander Ovechkin, but when it comes down to it, the teams that he plays on cannot get it done when it matters. That was a poor performance last night. And in him playing on the 3rd line last night, I think threw off his mojo, 1. And 2, he wasn't like he directly led to a turnover on the first goal. Like that was his fault. Like he did not play well.
And that's why I was trying to say that last night more than game 2, because it's one thing to get outscored. You don't look at Edmonton's performance against San Jose and like, oh my God, 7 goals. That's fucking embarrassing. Now that happens. Those are blowouts. That's a little different. Last night was 2 teams who came in on equal footing, and Pittsburgh reminded you what the difference is between postseason clutch and not. And what Washington did was show you what embarrassing looks like. No goals, what seemed like no effort. I mean, yeah, they peppered him with shots, but they were all garbage shots from garbage angles. They never really got there was. I would love to see a spray chart, but I would bet that slot shots would be under 30% of their shots. And
probably
you switch that with Pittsburgh, and I bet you Pittsburgh is like clipping at 45, 50%. Like
Pittsburgh played their game, dude. They
100%.
went into that building with full confidence. Sidney Crosby was ready to go. Malkin was flying in the first 10 minutes of that game. As soon as I watched the first 10 minutes of the game, I was like, Pittsburgh's going to win this game. Like, I wasn't even worried about it. I had it in my head.
I think I said it out loud about halfway through the first two. I was like, this is not going to go Washington's way. Like, they're just not, they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to step up to the plate. And I think, as much as I don't want to say it because I'm a big fan of him also, I think some of this, a healthy percentage of this falls on Ovechkin. Like, yes, he performs in the postseason. Obviously, we've discussed ad nauseum both on and off the show. Dude puts up points in the postseason. And, dear Facebook commenters on, every ABC or NBC Sports post about who wins what game, fuck you. Ovechkin's a great postseason performer. What he's not and what he hasn't been, at least from my perspective in his career, is clutch. He puts up points games 1 through 6. But if it gets to a game 7 and his back's against the wall, I mean, am I wrong? He just doesn't seem to show up in game 7s.
There was a stat in elimination games. He had 10 elimination games he's played in his career. He had like 17 points.
All right, so maybe I'm wrong.
It's just pretty good.
Last night felt like a...
But the last 2 years, though, no. He's not been it when it's mattered.
Yeah, I'd love to see not just elimination games, but I'd like to see game 7 specifically. Because it's one thing to be down 3-1, 3-2, and you're like, well, we can fight back and we can do it. That's a little different. It's an entirely different thing to know that no matter what, after this game is done, one of you is moving on and one of you isn't. At least to me. Like, that is what, that's why you look at a guy like Justin Williams, and he's not a player that you want on your team except for in the postseason. Game 7s, he's played 7 of them. Now he's played 8. He's 7-1. But he has 14 fucking points. Like 7 goals, 7 assists in just game 7s. I mean, that's the difference. That's what Ovechkin never really seemed to have to me. And it's getting worse. Like, he might have put up points before in game 7s. Again, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Probably should have done that, but show research on this show. Who are we talking about? But last night and last year, both on those game 7s against Pittsburgh, what I saw was a man who is, for lack of better terms, beating himself.
He was mentally checked out of that game in the second period. He was already out of it. When it was down 1-0, you could see it on his face. They kept zooming in and showing it. He was gone already.
Oh, yeah. Every time he made a mistake, he'd go to the bench and just yell, fuck. Like, just, what the fuck am I doing wrong? Like, what the fuck? Like, you're done at that point. You are done. It's 100% done. If you walk up to the plate thinking strikeout, you're going to strike out. And if you're going back to the bench thinking, what the fuck am I doing wrong? You're just going to keep doing those things wrong. So
you got to think, too, with, like, how old he's getting. He might not be as prolific as a scorer anymore. He's 10 years into his career right now. So his performance is going to start to taper now.
Yeah,
like,
it's just going to go.
That's a real thing.
It's like that, what is it, Newfound Glory song? It's all downhill from here? Or is that Simple Plan?
Yeah.
It's one of those two. But yeah, it's all downhill from here. It is. It's all downhill from here. Maybe that's the name of the episode. Because that's what that's what it is for this postseason. If you don't live in Pittsburgh or Nashville, and you don't pull for either of those teams, the rest of this postseason is bleak. All the good stories are gone. But I'm picking Pittsburgh in that series. Are you taking Pittsburgh also?
100%. I'm thinking Pittsburgh in like 5. I think it's the first time I'm calling him in under a few games. Like, I think Ottawa's going to be a good opponent for them because, like I said, the brand of hockey that they play. But I think Boucher is going to get out coached by Sullivan. I think that's a real thing. And Sidney Crosby, Gino, Phil Kessel, Marc-Andre Fleury is playing out of his mind for what the situation is. I mean, it's
Patrick
not surprising to me.
Jake Getzel.
Patrick, like, you just keep going, and you're just like, okay, how are they going to lose? But then
Carl Hagelin.
It's Ottawa. I mean, like, what's going to happen? Well, who knows? We'll know what, it's a Friday night? Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Okay, so we got Pittsburgh and we got Nashville, at least as far as pucking around is concerned. And as we did in previous rounds, we're not going to predict the next round in advance. We already did our full picture. We both failed miserably. We'll do these round by round. Before we wrap the show up, though, I want to spend a few minutes talking about there was 2 trades we didn't acknowledge. One happened last night, and the other one happened, I believe, last week, with Scott Darling going to Carolina and Ben Bishop going to Dallas. Steve, can you talk about those for a moment? I'm going to go grab me a beverage because my throat is gone.
Yeah, definitely. With the Carolina Hurricanes, I feel like Chicago and Carolina kind of have a thing going right now where they like to move some talent back and forth. And I think Scott Darling being a UFA had a really big decision on both of these moves. Actually, both people were pending UFAs. So I knew it was time for Scott Darling to get out because, Scott Darling was a pending UFA, and I had a feeling that with Chicago's cap space problems, they weren't going to be able to re-sign him, and they have depth at the goaltender position in the minor leagues. That's not something I was really worried about. Scott Darling's a hell of a guy. He's been a great goaltender for Chicago in lieu when Crawford hasn't played well or injuries or things. He stepped up to the plate, and he got rewarded with a really nice contract. I think it was $16 million for 4 years, so I think it was $4 million a year, something like that, 4.1, something like that. So and Carolina definitely needs a goalie that can play well because Cam Ward is not getting it done down there in Carolina. That is a fact.
And Eddie Lack will never get it done.
Eddie Lack, man, I thought he would be a good goaltender, and then defense doesn't have it. He doesn't play well. Go figure, right? And that move I think is going to pay off for Carolina rebuilding a bit.
Real quick, watch out for Carolina in the future. That team defensively is stacked for years.
Yeah, and they weren't that far out of the playoff race. They were in it till like the last week, so they were a fringe team. They were pretty good.
Scott Darling in Carolina though could be
their pushover.
Yeah, I mean because Noah Hannafin, Jake Bean, like Justin Schultz, like that team is stacked to the moon defensively, and they will be soon. It's not there yet. Might be a year or two out, but they're getting close. So Ben Bishop, you want to talk about guys who, if you told me 2 years ago he would be on 3 different teams in one season, I just slapped you in the face and called you retarded. Like, this is a guy who has led the league in goals against average, I believe, like 1 or 2 of the last 3 years. I know he had a 204 last year because we talked about that on the Gretzky Over Under Fair show, which, by the way, time out for our discussion on Ben Bishop. You did a great job on that show, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I went back and listened to it the other night. I think it was last night. And just hearing Roger just go ham on you for a minute just made me laugh. I literally had to pause it. I was laughing so hard. I forgot that he had like an aneurysm mid-show on you.
He did. He's a big 90s hockey fan. Dear our listeners, we didn't get to cross-promote this because we didn't find out until after the show. If you like what we have to say about hockey, go check out my other show that I'm a part of called Over Under Fair. Yeah, it is on its own feed on Podbean and Spotify, or Podbean and iTunes. Steve chimed in last week for a debate on Wayne Gretzky, so ended up being a pretty good episode. But anyways, back to Ben Bishop. If you had told me, though, that he was going to be traded to 3 different teams by the end of the 2017 season, I wouldn't have believed it. Now, if you had told me 3 weeks ago that he was going to Dallas, I would have said, duh. Because, as you pointed out, you called this a long time ago. Go.
Yeah, just because of the fact that, like, they need a goaltender. And right now, the enigma is they have 3 goaltenders pretty much right now. They have rights to it. They have rights to him because they haven't signed him for anything yet, which I don't feel like the number is going to be crazy high, but they could have, like, I don't know, 14 million goaltenders before the season starts.
They currently have 10 or 11?
It's like 10.4 mil. Yeah, I looked it up.
That's bad.
Yeah, and then one of those, I mean, both of those are until next year. So one, they had the option to buy one of them out. That's the first one. If they buy out Lehtonen, I think they would owe, or I think it would be like a 1.6 hit on the cap this next year. And if they buy out Antiniemi, it would be a 1.3 on the next season. So it's not too bad, but that's still, you still have one of these goalies for $4 or $5 million. That's probably going to be a backup because Ben Bishop is obviously going to be your starter. But who knows? Ben Bishop might walk. He might not sign. He might field other offers. They just own the rights to the contract until July 1st. So we haven't heard anything about a contract extension, but that's some of the things I've read. I mean, the only other thing I can think of is maybe they're swapping some goaltenders with other teams. Maybe Vegas will take a bad contract off their hand to help their floor ceiling, which I don't see happening.
That is actually the prediction right now, is that Vegas would take either Niemi or Lehtinen, because remember, inside that upper echelon of hockey minds who are lucky enough to run teams, those are two good goalies. Don't forget that. If you're smart enough to run a team, you know for a fact in your fucking smart head that Antti Niemi and Kari Lehtinen are franchise goalies.
But you know who would be a better goalie that they could probably get their hands on, Vegas?
Peter Mrazek?
Mm-hmm. Younger, cheaper. I mean, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw some of this stuff. I'm like, Jimmy Howard? I don't know. I think the Wings will keep Jimmy Howard. He's played pretty well right now in the Olympics thing going on, whatever it's called, the World Championship or something. He's been playing pretty well.
The fucking 23rd world, there's another world TAMP tournament every 8 months. Honestly, how does anybody take any of them seriously? It's just hockey.
I don't. I just look at the numbers. Dylan Larkin scoring goals. I'm just like, okay, where was this last year? And then Jimmy Howard's putting up respectable numbers, and I'm like, okay, that's about right.
Yeah, good job. But you're playing against players who I don't know, and none of these numbers are credible because some of those guys might be garbage. I don't know. Some of them might be great.
It's not Team USA or Team Canada or Russia. It's who cares? Yeah,
exactly. Oh, hey, Larkin and Howard were on the team that beat Bolivia 61-0. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah, but back to the Ben Bishop stuff.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We kind of sidetracked there. I think Dallas was the obvious fit for them, but it's going to definitely put them in a conundrum. And to see how Jim Neal over there handles this is going to be really telling of whether he gets a contract extension or not, because he's made some questionable decisions with the back end of the team. We'll just be fair.
I want to take
Having
one moment.
Having two goalies for $10.4 million is just stupid.
No, it is. And I want to take one moment to ask you a question, and I'm going to explain it a little bit before I ask it. Have you ever seen a more product of the Red Wings move than publicly announcing that Ben Bishop is a top-tier goalie in the NHL after a season in which he went 15-18 with a 234 and a 904? He had one of his worst seasons. He's on the downside of I'm pretty sure he's on the wrong side of 30. He's going to be expensive. You already spent a lot for two other goalies who are very similar coming into their contracts with Dallas. Is there no more Red Wings move than to say that?
That's kind of the first thing I thought of. And not to mention that the Tampa team that he played in behind had a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the puck, and he still did not play very well. He had a very down year. And Vasilevsky came in and pretty much stole his job. So I think the writing on the wall was literally at the beginning of this last season when they extended When they extended him, when they extended him, I was like, Ben Bishop is gone. That's a no-brainer right there.
Ben Bishop is gone, and Ben Bishop is, in that moment, I realized he is a product of the system, because when he went
Steve Yzerman looks like a genius.
He does, because when he went to L.A., he didn't put up good numbers. You're talking 2-5, or 2-5-2, I think was his record, or something like that. And that's behind one of the best one of the best top six in the league. I know LA doesn't score and they lose, but they lose every game 2-1. And the games that Ben Bishop was in, they lost 3-1. Ben Bishop is, I will live to see the other side of this statement, but I think that Ben Bishop is the Antti Niemi of the future. This is a guy who is going to get his big check right now, and you're just going to see just less and less every year. You disagree? Go ahead.
I disagree on the contract. I don't think they're signing him for over 3.5. If I was the Dallas Stars, I would not go over 3.5. And you know how long that contract would be? 3 year stops. We're not going length because there's no way in hell. He had some good seasons, but the first year he faced adversity, his record was garbage. That's not confident. If I'm the Dallas Stars, I'm not confident in that. And especially after the goalie experiment, I just went and spent a bunch of money. You think I'm going to spend over $4 million on a goaltender coming off a bad year?
That is exactly the reason. That is exactly the reason that I think they will. Because if there's anything that is proven in this league time and fucking time again, is that stupid GMs make the same stupid fucking mistakes over and over and over again, and we have to talk about it. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Like,
and not to mention, there was rumblings that Dallas was going to try to trade for Carey Price and give up Tyler Seguin.
And why the fuck not?
I would never do that, because who's going to score if you have a good goaltender? Like, all these teams, right? And then not to mention, Dallas's defense is still abysmal. There's no back end, so your goaltending doesn't really matter because you're still going to get scored on, and then you're going to lose every game 6-5.
Hooray! That's the Dallas way. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the Detroit way. Like, that's the thing. Like,
I don't think Detroit's that bad.
No,
I think I don't remember giving them that many games. But
no, you're right. But I think that like what you're seeing is like an alternate reality version of Detroit. Like, this is Detroit, except instead of Nick Lidstrom, they got Tyler Seguin. Like, instead of having a perennial, Hall of Fame, once in a generation defenseman, you got a forward who could potentially be that over the course of his career. So you lose your game 6-5. Like, Dallas,
and not to mention Ken Hitchcock is now their coach, who is a heavily defensive-minded coach first.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going to be interesting.
Their goal scoring is going to be abysmal this year.
It's going to be their goal scoring. Either their goal scoring will be abysmal, or it will be good because they're talented. But I get the feeling like Ken Hitchcock going to Dallas and becoming a coach who is a defensive-minded coach, defense first, defense, would be like Gordon Ramsay going into my kitchen. Like, what the fuck tools do you have to work with? You have marinara sauce in the fucking jar? Are you shitting me? Where is your fruits? Where are your vegetables? They're frozen? Are you shitting me? I'm out. Like I can't do an English accent, or I could if I wasn't sick, because it whatever. But like, I just feel like it's like super overqualified given the tools that he's going to have to work with. Like, he's going to be trying to make a fucking 5-piece or 5-course dinner with ramen down there.
Yeah, that's just not going to happen.
It's absolutely not. And I hate to say this, but I'm out of things to talk about. Did you have anything you wanted to wrap it up before I do our little post-amble?
I mean, I'm just hoping the playoffs deliver, because as a hockey fan, I still want it to be exciting, even though none of our teams are in it, which, kind of sucks. But we had our horses in the race. Now they're not. But for me personally, I'm not uninterested in it. I might not watch as much of one series as I'll watch as the other, if that makes sense. Just because, like, the Western games are going to be late games too, so. And that's the only saving grace for me, because it's like 10 to 1 is like my productivity hours. So it's like if a game is on, at least I can kind of handle it. I'll have it in the background. Yeah.
Can't wait for that Ottawa-Anaheim final, though, huh?
Dude, if I'm just boycotting. I'm just done. We're not going to, we won't cover Stanley Cup final hockey after that point.
Dear listeners, he's wrong. We will, but we won't be happy about it. Subscribe to us on iTunes. If you're not into iTunes, check us out on TuneIn Radio. And I got to stop because, again, before I go further, dear all of our listeners, we need you to get on iTunes, whether it's on your phone or on the website. This is iTunes only. I need you to find a way to get to iTunes and give us a review. Cannot stress this enough. Your reviews on iTunes is tantamount to free advertising. I'm giving you a peek behind the curtain because I don't know about you, listener, but I want to take the next step. I want to be a show that's getting 500-600 downloads a week, and the only way we can do that now is with your help, and we need your help. And if you like what we do, this is where you can step up and help us out. If you're not into iTunes, you can check us out on Podbean, Stitcher, Facebook, TuneIn, Google Play, YouTube is where some of our shows go. You can follow the brand on Twitter at Sports Radio DET. You can check out our sister show when it returns from its summer hiatus at STW_SRD. You can follow me on Twitter at JM Pinkham. You can follow Steve on Twitter at
FranchiseGFX.
Check out our website at sportsradiodetroit.com. Thank you, and hopefully healthier. We'll see you guys next week.